hosted Thanksgiving, and we'd have anywhere from 15 to 25 people in our house, and it was like a week-long extravaganza. But this year, our niece, who lives over in Clinton here, is graciously volunteered to host everybody. So we're just going to help out by fixing a little bit of food and hopefully go and enjoy. Not too far to drive either, so which is kind of nice.
That'll be great. So, Thanksgiving, of course, turkey, fall turkey in Illinois.
Yeah. I finished, this is the first year I've ever hunted turkeys in the fall. And I had people tell me it's really different than the spring, and they were completely right. In the spring, you're trying to attract a male or a gobbler, and you call to them. You listen for them, you call to them. Hopefully they come to you and get a shot. In the fall, they're not really doing that. They're worried more about just having company and finding food, and this year water, because it was so dry. It took me about 3 days to find the flock on this property. And I called to them, I saw them, I got close a few times, but I could never get a shot on them. And I was really getting discouraged because Illinois season is about a little over a week. And it started on a Saturday, I believe, and the following Thursday, I still hadn't gotten a shot. And I thought, oh boy, this isn't good. So I went out, it was kind of warm, set a single hen decoy out about 25 yards in front of my little pop-up blind. And I was sitting there about 5:15, playing with my phone or something, about half asleep. And I looked up and I thought, well, yeah, the decoys look really good. And I looked back down and I thought, well, wait a minute, there's 3 of them out there now. And what had happened, 2 young hens had snuck in and they were beating up the decoy, the hen decoy. And they thought, well, they had a dominant hen here. They're going to gang up on her and chase her away. And I ended up shooting one of those. But I got, I don't know, probably 5 pounds of meat off of her. Mm-hmm. I flay out the breast. I chunk up the thighs and use them in soups and stews and that. And turkey salad, too, which is really good. But these are young birds, and they should be really, really tender.
How close do you have to get a shot?
I use tungsten, which is a heavier shot than lead even. It's a non-toxic shot. And I've killed them out to about 45 yards, and that's about as far as I want to shoot. Once you get past 40 yards, 45 yards, that even with tungsten, the pattern's really tight. There's a lot of bad things that can happen, and I'd prefer just to get them as close as I can. And the only reason I use tungsten, I prefer not to shoot lead, because where I hunt a lot of times there's birds that are on the ground, they're packing stuff up. I don't want them to pick up the lead pellets. So that's just me, though. That's how I feel.
Point number 2, we got to watch out.
Yeah, it's that time of the year, folks. The corn is out for the most part in Illinois, and I think in Iowa, too. It's been a really dry fall, and harvest went fairly fast. The bucks are really chasing the does right now. The deer are moving just incredibly. Yesterday, I'm running a trap line for some landowners that want to nest predators out. Anyway, I was about 8 o'clock, and I saw 3 different bucks chasing within 15 minutes. And they paid no attention to me at all. I was within 20 yards of one. I saw the doe jumped out in front of me, and luckily I was on a farm lane, not on a road. And she kind of glanced at the truck and just kept going up the hill. And about 2 seconds later comes this big buck right behind her. And he never even glanced at me. And he followed that doe just like a bird dog. I mean,
you had one thing in mind?
Yeah, it's breeding time, and those does are coming into estrus right now. And, between the moon phase and the length of day, it's got them into that season. And I'll tell you what, they're just wacky right now. For an animal, those adult males and the does, too, are so weary during other parts of the year. This time of the year, it's just they forget everything. And that's why a lot of times people will say, well, I avoided the deer, but it ran into me. Because they're basically blind to what's going on out there right now. Their hormones are raging, and they're, want to breed.
Sound like teenagers out there.
They are. That's correct.
Pond seminar.
Yeah, the SWCD is planning a pond seminar. It's going to be sometime in February. I think originally it was scheduled for the 8th, but there's a conflict with Bald Eagle Days here in Clinton. So they were talking about changing the date. What I would do is, if you're interested, I would still call and find out the details and get a slot. I know the IDNR fisheries biologist will be there, and they may bring a couple other people in, too, that talk about landowner responsibilities on ponds and stuff like that. But I know we put one on, it's been 4 or 5 years ago, and I was still there. I think we had close to 50 people show up. So I would let the office know you're interested. Like I said, I think it's going to be sometime in February. If the weather's decent, they may actually go outside and take a look at some ponds too. But typically, the biologist who puts the thing on is really good. He has a very good PowerPoint, and he'll cover as much as you guys will let him, and he'll answer as many questions as he can too. But it's worthwhile. The last time he did it was a very good seminar.
Maybe we'll find out more when you're back here in December.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the next point here? We're again visiting with Dave Harrison.
Yeah, there was an article that came out through DNR talking about the 2023 in Illinois, talking about the 2023 gun season for deer, and of the deer that were checked in, which depending on where you're at. In the northern part of the state, you actually have to do a physical check-in now. The southern part, you don't. You can do phone. But you're still, if you don't check them in and you're not in a CWD county, you still have to phone it in. And they ask you one of the questions, what firearm did you use to harvest the deer with? And I don't know. I thought this was a little low, but they keep track of this stuff. They said 20% of the deer last year were harvested with a straight-walled cartridge, which I think last year or 2 years ago was the first time you could use them in Illinois. I know Iowa's had that for several years. Illinois decided to go with a non-repeating rifle. You have to use a single shot. I thought about it, but I'm shooting a 20-gauge slug right now, and it goes about 1,800 feet per second. And that's about what these rifles would be doing. And it's 275 grains, which is a pretty substantial slug. And I couldn't justify it. And don't get me wrong, I'm a gun guy. I like to play around with firearms. But I trust this little slug gun I have, and I'm good out to 100, 150 yards with it. And that's about as far as I can see where I hunt anyway. And the advantage to a rifle is normally it's got a little bit flatter trajectory. You can put maybe a little bit better scope on it. So, there's a need for them. And hopefully it makes you a little bit more efficient hunter, too.
Well, you've got a comfort zone, so you're good where you're at.
Yeah.
Next point, prepare for dormant seeding.
Yeah. If you're going to do some native seedings, whether it be CRP or you're doing it on your own, late fall and winter is an excellent time, especially if you're going into bean stubble. That's a great way to do it. The key to the thing, though, is one, the ground should be frozen when you do it, and then hopefully you get rain next spring after you seed it. But I would be, if you're especially with the native seeding with flowers and native grasses, call these nurseries and reserve the stuff quick or order it. A lot of times some of these mixes are gone very, very fast, and you need to, let them know what you need so they can make it up. And it may take a week or two for them to mix it up, too. Depending on the nursery, a lot of times you'll get seeds that come from your very county. There's people that collect these things, sell them to nurseries, and a lot of times you'll end up getting seeds that are, naturally grown right in the county where you ordered them from.
Again, visiting with Dave Harrison from Whiteside County. Pruning season coming upon us.
Yeah, if you have trees of any sort, and you can prune pines too up to the point. I'm talking more of hardwoods and fruit trees, though. Oaks, hickories, walnuts. That dormant season is also a great time to prune. Normally, I like to wait until all the leaves are off, which now you're in pretty good shape. And you can prune all the way through March. I like it when it's nice and cold, though, so there's no insects or disease transmission going on. And if you're really picky, and I don't do this a lot, but some people recommend if you're doing a small number of trees, between the trees, you actually take alcohol or some kind of disinfectant. You clean the whether it be pruning shears or sometimes I use a chainsaw to prune too. A small one's really handy. It goes very, very quick if you're steady with it. But the thing, to keep in mind is when it's cold, that's the time to do it. The sap won't be flowing, and if you hit a time when the sap is flowing, you probably ought to back off for a while. And I've had that happen even in the first part of February on like a south-facing hillside on a sunny day, and the temperature gets up to 50. The sap will start flowing. So you got to be a little careful on that. Earlier in the season you can do it, the better chance the tree will heal itself. And I always get the question, should I paint the wound? Should I put some kind of treatment on it? I wouldn't. If you're pruning in the dormant season, you shouldn't have to treat it.
How much pruning, how far back should you go?
Well, typically there's if you take your thumb and your first finger and you put it together, at the base of the branch, there's a collar just like that. You don't want to go into that collar. Just stay right above it. Don't leave a stub, but you can do a flat cut right on top of that collar, and that collar really acts as the tree's Band-Aid, and it'll seal that wound off. Usually 2 inches is the maximum branch you want to take off unless there's damage. You get above 2 inches, a lot of times the tree won't heal itself. So, but it's time to prune. The other thing to keep in mind too is keep your whatever you're using sharp. And if you've got 2 blades, especially on the loppers that you use, that gives you better cut than just a single cutting blade and then like a crushing. I don't know what you call them. They're called crushing blades, I think. But that doesn't give you as great a cut. So, and on a bigger branch, up to 2 inches, do a cut at the base of that collar underneath. Take part of the weight off the forward part of the branch, and then take the stub off. And that way you won't strip any bark off the tree when it comes off.
Got a couple of hunting things to talk about.
Yeah.
First of all, deer season and then spring turkey.
Yeah, Illinois archery season is well underway. In fact, this is the prime time right now with the deer moving the way they are. This is when the big ones get killed. There's been, a change in Illinois rules. I think it was 2 years ago, pretty close to when they started allowing the straight-walled rifles. They also allowed general use of crossbows, and that's really increased the harvest. In fact, the archery harvest is pretty close, if not exceeding, the rifle harvest or the gun harvest now too. So that's going on. Gun season is coming up pretty quick. November 22nd through the 24th is the first season, and the majority of the kill is during first season because the rut's still going on. So it's a great time to be out there. And a lot of guys hunt from trees or elevated stands. I've started hunting a lot from the ground, and I've killed the same number of deer. Killed some really big ones from a tent. But you got to get that thing out. I usually put them out in September, because otherwise if you put them out there, say the end of October, the deer know you're there. And they can tell. They, especially those
Dave's
does.
putting up a tent over here. What's going on?
The word gets out. Especially the does. They will look at you, and they will spook every time. Now what happens is the deer will walk past the tent or look at them, and they kind of ignore it after that. But if you put it out a week or two ahead of the gun season, look out. You're going to get spotted. So that would be my advice to you. And just as hopefully you've done it already, but if you're in a tree stand, make sure those chains and those belts are tight and they're not chewed on by squirrels. I had that happen one time. I checked a stand in September, and I grabbed it and it was loose. I thought, what in the world's going on? And I had a ratchet strap on it, and I looked, and the squirrels had chewed through the ratchet strap. So be careful. That's where most hunting accidents happen, in fact, is people falling out of trees.
Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Ugh, that's nasty.
Spring turkey.
Yeah, spring turkey's going to be here pretty quick in April in Illinois. The first lottery for general licenses, that's gun licenses or archery, doesn't matter, closes on December 1st. After that, they'll publish a list on the website of which counties have permits available and how many. Second lottery, then it starts on December 12th and runs through January 13th. And then finally, the third lottery is January 24th through February 10th. And remember, you can only get 3 total permits for the spring season. But there's a lot of them around. If you can get in the first lottery, you're almost guaranteed one, unless it's just a small county with a limited number of permits.
Is that pretty much all online, Dave?
I do everything online.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can also, I think you could print out actually I've got one here. I've got a paper permit that you can do it by mail too if you want.
Oh,
but
okay.
just make sure you mail it early enough. You don't miss that deadline, because it's taking anywhere from 7 to 10 days to get stuff, from point A to point B. So keep that in mind.
We got a couple of minutes. You got a couple of points. Can you go over them both quick?
Yeah, you bet. In 25 and 26, if you're in Illinois and you're applying for an IEPA burn permit, you may end up having to get a burn plan too. I would call the Springfield office and ask them. I know they're telling people that sent in permits this year they were going to give them the permit, but next year they definitely had to have a burn permit. There is a Pheasants Forever representative in the Morrison office that's been writing the burn permits and burn plans, but it takes about a month to 2 months to get those. So this year I think you're going to be okay. If you don't have one, the IEPA will still probably give you a permit, but next year they've said they're going to require plans on at least some of them. So I would check with IEPA, maybe stop in the Morrison SWCD office and talk to the Pheasants Forever rep and get his opinion too, because he's been working with it more so than I have.
And the final point.
Yeah, this one's kind of a nasty one. I guess I saved the bad news for last. In Illinois, CWD in northern Illinois has become a real problem, and it's gotten as far south as Princeton, Illinois. It's all around us. Carroll County's got it, Joe Davis, and I believe finally Whiteside's got a positive too. But in the past, a lot of what was done was deer numbers were reduced either by sharpshooting or more permits for hunters. Illinois has basically said we're going to back off on the sharpshooting and probably use it on just in very specific instances and not in a general way like it's been done. That's a big change. You know, Illinois is shifting more to a let's see what happens mode versus we're going to try to stop this thing. The rate of infection's gone from like 0.5% up to 7% in certain areas, and that's incredibly high. And that means there's probably the disease is here. It's not going to be stopped, and we're just going to do the best we can to try to keep an eye on it and harvest deer by permits.
All right. So we will talk to you again December 10th.
I will write that down.
Looking forward to it.
That's Pearl Harbor Day, isn't it?
I'm not sure. It's my wife's birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday.
You're listening to AM 1340 KROS, Clinton, Iowa.
FM 105.9.
And KROSradio.com.